Welcome to uBook channel. Read and listen to the greatest stories that mankind has ever told. From Iliad to Covid Terror, and other famous classics. Enjoy the best world literatures throughout history.
Covid Terror. Copyright 2021 by Gerry de Cadiz. All rights reserved. A unified Al-Qaeda and Islamic State took advantage of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic in reinvigorating its jihadist cause for dominance and the re-establishment of a caliphate. Commander of the Armée d'Orient in the Mediterranean campaign of 1798, General Napoleon Bonaparte said, "The plague was ravaging the city, and that every day, more than 60 persons were dying of it. If the soldiers had entered the city, they would have brought back into the camp the germs of that horrible evil, which is more to be feared than all the armies in the world."
Covid Terror. Chapter 17.
Ranakpur Jain Temple, Rajasthan, India. April 2, 2020. Translated as "Souls render service to one another," this motto of Jainism emphasized a belief that there is an eternal dharma with the Tirthankaras, guiding every cycle of the Jain cosmology. Louise Luthwaite's survival instinct was awakened when she saw a movement at the base of the temple. Just a side glimpse at him, and their eyes locked for a brief moment. She immediately recognized the threat and danger. That man in an embroidered and silken Jain traditional dress is a foreigner. Just like herself, he is just faking with the ceremonies. Although the body movements and expressions cannot be considered as pretentious, as he kept in cadence with the procession, and do the regulatory chanting, but the eyes kept on roving through the crowds. When their eyes met, he also sensed some form of recognition. Code Black, Fraja. Louise pushed the button in her accessory bracelet. A long-range audio signal transmitted her voice to a telecommunication facility in the Indian subcontinent, and was scooped by Minsat's geosynchronous relay antenna. Code Black would tell Ahmed's cyber warriors to pinpoint the location of Louise and arrange immediately, with the help of local Al-Qaeda ISIS fighters in the area, to evacuate her to safety. About 1,444 carved pillars adorn the Ranakpur temple. Its inner sanctum comprises of artistically decorated chambers, proof of the high culture and creativity of the legendary Dharma Shah, a local Jain businessperson, who started construction of the temple in the 15th century, following a divine vision. Louise saw that the man and a female companion started climbing the red-painted steps. She has no place to go except to the inner chamber. She is in a garbhagriha, with the main Chomukha Adinatha idol towering above her. The four openings of the sanctum lead to the dancing hall, which is connected to a two-storied pillared pavilion called Mandapa. This rampart is connected to another two-storied Balana and Naila Mandapa, with sub-shrines being enclosed by a walled courtyard. She is hoping that a secret passage could open a way out from the temple. She's not afraid of anyone. But being cornered in a foreign land makes her vulnerable. She quickened her steps ahead of the throng of people, trying to evade from her pursuers. "Where is the restroom?" she politely asked a young tourist guide. The boy pointed to descending steps on the right. "Don't get lost. Just look for the signage. There are doors leading to several bhonara," he called out. Louise recalled from her briefing that this temple has a total of 84 bhonara or underground chambers, built to protect the Jain idols from the invading Mughals in ancient time. This gave her an idea. As she descended the wide staircase, she spied several rooms in all sides. Maybe one of these could serve as a temporary hiding place, but for how long? She entered the center room, as pilgrims started to fill in the main chamber above. She was startled when her phone vibrated. She read a local text message. Fraja, stay put, Rasul. A messenger. She can't help but blurt out. She had that in mind, that her rescuers would be some dashing warriors of Allah. A goddamned messenger. She braced for the man and his companion to appear anytime, with cocked and silenced pistols, steadily pointed at her head. Be ready, cause she might be armed. She noticed our approach. Sage signaled Karina as they reached the Rangamandapa or dancing hall. The chamber is getting full. The Jain pilgrims are energetically doing ceremonial prayers and synchronized chanting. There is only one obvious place for her to go. Sage pointed to the descending staircase, then adjusted for easy reached his 9mm Glock 26, a sidearm temporarily borrowed from the Central Bureau of Investigation, as a courtesy of the Indian government to its CIA ally. No one expected it to happen. A CS gas canister explodes right in the middle of the hall. The entire area was thrown into mayhem. People run in all directions, mindless whom they bumped, so long as they can get out from the place, and caught some fresh air. Cries of pain can be heard from those whose eyes, nose, and mouth were left unprotected from the tear gas. Almost everybody is coughing. It's a diversionary attack. Let's go. Sage got hold of Karina's wrist, and they run outside, down the painted steps of the temple. His priority right now is the safety of this lady. During his training in Langley, Sage knew the effect of a chlorobenzalmalononitrile gas attack. When you're exposed to a tear gas, your eyes sting, your vision blurs, and you cry and blink uncontrollably. Once the gas clings to the eyes, and other sensitive parts of your body, it gets worse. One effect is darkening of vision, which will disorient and confuse the victim, potentially to the point of emotional and psychological distress. We cannot go on searching and apprehending her. We don't know how many backup fighters Sharifia have in this area. Is this the first time you've been in a situation like this? He asked, seeing that Karina was rattled. She merely nodded and wiped her teary eyes. It's nothing serious. The chemical's irritating effect will expire after some minutes. He tried to ease her fear. Good thing that she got the sense to close her eyes, and cover her nose and mouth, as they run outside. The police and temple security personnel instantly took charge of the situation. They gathered everyone in the central courtyard. First responders and medical personnel began checking the victims for any serious injuries. Nobody noticed a couple in nondescript festival dresses, seemingly unconcerned of what's going on. After the authorities gave the go signal, they hastily boarded the first bus back to the airport in Udaipur, ahead of the cab where Sage and Karina rode. Sage thought that it could be due to the CS gas attack at the Ranakpur Jain temple. His depression is quite overbearing. It's been a week since his arrival in Los Angeles from a CIA-endorsed assignment in India. He elected to have a home vacation, as it became customary of him to be with his family every spring, the season when California is at its most beautiful. It was a fiasco. He declared as Gwen handed him another shot of Safrida, the bar's favorite. She brought him along to Aaron Al-Hassani's corporate party at Rosenthal, the Malibu estate, introducing him as a special friend. The tasting room is a perfect place to enjoy the sweet breeze, as it is located along the Pacific Coast Highway, with the beach just a stone's throw away.
Great minds must enjoy some wines. From time to time, the president-CEO of Al-Hassani Industries declared, when some scientists declined to join the party. "You did a great job," he added. They were assembled for the monthly R&D review, at the AI Building Function Hall. The work at the AI Med Laboratory is gaining a momentum. Primarily done to assess if tests or treatments are safe for and work in people, the clinical trials of the candidate vaccine, Sinovac, was given an FDA permission to be administered to the first batch of human participants. The Phase 0 trials were successful. Being the first to be injected on people, the AI med scientists were very careful, that it took them almost a month to perfect the vaccine and the procedures. They subjected 15 volunteers to a very small dosage of the drug. Consequently, Dr. Guinevere del Pilar and her team were able to learn how the drug is being processed in the body, and how it affects the body. Before coming here, they just got the result of the last procedure in the phase 1 trial. Aaron was so happy that he made a reservation right away to this venue, even when they are still discussing the experiments. We need to find the best dose of Sinovax, with the fewest side effects. Gwen reminded her colleagues of the sensitiveness of their experiments. It's the lives of the 30 patients that is at stake here. It's been 2 weeks that they started giving very low doses of the drug to patients. In the last 7 days, higher doses were given to other patients, until side effects become too severe or the desired effect is seen. There is a 50-50 chance that a new drug may help patients. Our phase 1 trials were meant to test Sinovac's safety. The research team leader stepped down from the podium, and handed a single sheet of paper to Aaron, who is sitting attentively in the front row. The synthesized report of the experiments we conducted at AI Med Laboratory is with our project manager and investor, the President CEO of Al-Hassani Industries. Colleagues, it is my pleasure to inform everyone that Sinovac has been found to be safe enough that it can be tested in a phase 2 clinical trial. Dr. Del Pilar flashed her signature dimpled smile amidst a resounding applause, and to the delight of the press people from several international media outlets.
Maybe you can leave those sour moments behind, for the meantime. The wine tastes good, and the music is just right. Gwen sat down and leaned on Sage, as they listened to the music, being played by a live band at the makeshift stage. The final verse of Hugh Grant and Haley Bennett's, A Way Back Into Love, is particularly meaningful for them. All I want to do is find a way back into love. I can't make it through without a way back into love. And if I open my heart to you, I'm hoping you'll show me what to do. And if you help me to start again, you know that I'll be there for you in the end. After the botched military operation of retrieving the stolen virus X from the GU Imperial Palace, they spent a time in Wuhan before Gwen went back to France, and Sage to his teaching job in Japan. They keep their friendship by constant video calls, and posts in a common blog that he created for the two of them. She felt a certain affection at him, upon learning that despite being in Tokyo, and using his clout in the CIA, he made an arrangement with the Chinese government, that a lady soldier be assigned to keep her company for protection. Last month, after his paper presentation in Erasmus University, Sage passed by Paris and visited Gwen. It was the first time that he was given an unforgettable treat outside the family. They had a lovely tour of the Louvre Museum, himself feeling amazed of the magnificent artworks that he could only see from the movies. The Seine River cruise was very memorable, and after telling him that she has aquaphobia, she remained in his tight embrace throughout the voyage. Finally, the lunch at the topmost restaurant on the Eiffel Tower was very sumptuous. A lot of their wacky pictures posted in their blog were taken from the tower. She is the only lead I have to the stolen virus from Wuhan, your virus X, and the unsolved murder case of my mentor, General Friedrich Clark. His face is in agony as he held her hand. Gwen can feel the stress weighing down on this man. If only there is a way that she can help ease his burden. Without their knowing, somebody from the opposite table was lip-reading on what Sage were saying. A pretty co-ed in a chic spaghetti strap and shorts was laughing loudly, along with her rowdy companions. She noted the words Wuhan, Virus X and Clark. After a while, she got her smartphone, and did some selfie and groupie poses with her friends. It took only a minute before the pictures of the UNU professor and AI med scientist were received through a secured black hole email account of the Sheikh of the Slaughterers, and copy furnished Emir al-Quraishi, the Al-Qaeda ISIS intelligence officer, who immediately signaled the Khalifa for a drastic and immediate action. and when the corona becomes viral, it will be a very difficult time, and for disbelievers, not easy, to bear with. Quoting from the article, probable mention of a COVID-19-like pandemic in the Quran, Dr. Guinevere del Pilar sensed a slight tremor in her voice. Each member state has a representative in the United Nations General Assembly. In hindsight, every word she utters is being translated into the dialect or national language of each representative in this distinguished audience. For me, that statement of the Delhi-based thinker, specifically on the term disbelievers, should be placed within the context not of religious leanings, but in terms of being a part of a collective, and one Homo sapiens sapiens. In my field of discipline, it may pertain to those who lack the knowledge, the will, and the means to fight the global pandemic. It's been a while that the world was subjected to a grievous phenomenon called COVID-19. It can be said that the SARS-CoV-2 is a great equalizing force. It does not discriminate the geopolitical, economic, and socio-cultural status of its victims. The entire human race became an unwilling subject to a basic experiment of nature. Success in this test would result to the betterment of lives, with the technologies and abilities to thwart the lethality of this virus. But failure to adapt with the pandemic may ultimately lead to human extinction. The UN Assembly Hall was eerily quiet. With an endorsement from the World Health Organization, the Filipina geneticist and discoverer of virus X was invited by the Secretary General to speak before members of the main deliberative, policy-making, and representative organ of the United Nations. Her mention of human extinction was understood to its core by all representatives. The total expiration of the human species was discussed thoroughly in many occasions in every national platform, involving scenarios such as climate change, global nuclear annihilation, biological warfare, and ecological collapse. But all those discussions were on a hypothetical level. Never did in the history of mankind that a possible anthropogenic extinction has been openly deliberated by people who are right in the middle of its process, that anytime they themselves could become fatal victims in this crisis, like what is happening at the moment. The COVID-19 hit various countries, with severe repercussions, in the socio-economic and political systems of our respective governments. It was unexpected, it was sudden, and it is deadly. The World Health Organization reported that the latest cumulative count of reported cases surpassed the 40 million mark. Although there is an average of 70% recovery rate worldwide, but it's not a reason to be happy about. 25% of victims refer to active cases or those under medical support whose conditions and demand for proper health care cannot be responded to by the government due to deficiency in manpower, technological and medical resources. The so-called flattening the curve is an artificial scenario meant to assuage the people that something is being done. The stark reality is that an average of 5% from the total number of cases worldwide eventually became included in the count for fatality rate. She took a pause for effect. We have Black Death 2.0 in our time. Despite the statistics, 1 million deaths so far is something that no one, not even those with the meanest heart, cannot consider as a consolation. Although we have been on a race to come up with vaccines for this viral agent, but the end of this darkness is not yet in sight. Gwen concluded her talk. Irrespective of nationalities, religious affiliations, political systems, economic subsistence, and geographical locations, we all belong to one human genome. The only way to persist in the COVID-19 pandemic is through a unified effort, cooperation, and mutual support among nations. We fight as one. We heal as one. We survive as one. The ominous speech hit everyone like a thunderbolt. Not a single clap was ever heard in the hall. But all participants accorded Dr. Guinevere del Pilar the ultimate respect befitting to a distinguished speaker in the UN General Assembly. They stand together, solemnly bow their heads, and spent a moment of silence in prayer for all those who have perished due to coronavirus in their respective countries. First time being in the world stage, Gwen found it unsettling, the incessant flashes of cameras, and babble of words directed at her. Although they have monitored her unhappy news before all the representatives of nations, in this press conference, members of the global media are excited to learn some specific information from her. Dr. Del Pilar, why have we been in this COVID-19 mess in the first place? A CNN correspondent made the first salvo. Gwen answered, with some background facts to put into context, the technical concepts. The severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus infection, oftentimes lead to a new type of pneumonia. Every day, we saw from the media that COVID-19 is affecting millions of patients from almost all countries in the world, and this number keeps on increasing. The virus is highly infectious, with a long incubation period. Just what I reported earlier to the UN General Assembly, the disease causes a relatively high death rate, which consequently led to severe health problems all over the world. From its inception, the WHO determined through results and analysis of genetic sequence, that SARS-CoV-2 has an ecological origin in bat populations. Scientists across the world can tell with confidence, that it is highly likely that the virus is zoonotic in nature. A close investigation of how the infection started, pointed to Wuhan seafood wholesale market, as the point of origin. This information is common knowledge to everyone. Here comes the meat. In the early days, when healthcare facilities in Wuhan were swamped with patients showing SARS symptoms, everybody were asking, who ate the poor bloodsuckers? Gwen's words referring to bats, gathered a raucous laugh from the media. In China, hapless policemen scoured also the market, to investigate who sold bats, in the months immediately prior to the detection of the dreaded disease. But authorities were really baffled, as no one in the market poached bats anymore. The nearest caves serving as habitat of the suspected fruit bats, the natural reservoir of human coronavirus, is about 800 miles to Wuhan. Press people were busy taking note, or adjusting their microphones, to catch every word of the geneticist. So, let's erase from our hit list Batman's faithful minions. Gwen clarified, as she quoted the COVID-19 Situation Report 94 of the WHO. All available evidence for COVID-19 suggests that SARS-CoV-2 has a zoonotic source. Since there is usually limited close contact between humans and bats, it is more likely that transmission of the virus to humans happened through another animal species, one that is more likely to be handled by humans. This intermediate animal host or zoonotic source could be a domestic animal, a wild animal, or a domesticated wild animal and, as of yet, has not been identified. All the published genetic sequences of SARS-CoV-2, isolated from human cases, are very similar. This suggests that the start of the outbreak resulted from a single-point introduction in the human population, around the time that the virus was first reported in humans in Wuhan, China, in December 20, 19. Subsequent investigations of health authorities revealed that the single-point introduction in the human population could be a wild animal that served as the intermediary host of the virus. Pangolin, a humble, scaly mammal yet highly prized for its medicinal value, makes it the probable candidate on how the coronavirus jumped from animals to humans. Gwen bared her thoughts to everyone. Believing that their scales have healing properties, Chinese and Vietnamese traditional medicine bolstered the high demand for pangolins, while its meat is considered a delicacy especially in posh restaurants. The suspected market in Wuhan is your friendly retail store of live animals and seafood. For an agreed price, you can also find some exotic favorites like your endangered pangolins, which according to estimates, about 100,000 were poached annually, making it the most trafficked animal in the world. A reporter from Al Jazeera raised an issue. How true is the report that SARS-CoV-2 was a laboratory construct? There are no scientific evidences to support that claim. Gwen quickly dispelled the notion. The viral strain from patient 0 that we have studied indicated that it has a natural animal origin, and is not a manipulated or constructed virus. Since then, The genomic features of the virus were thoroughly studied in different countries, among heterogeneous cases, which always confirm that there was no human intervention on how this coronavirus infect, evade, and transmit in its current state. Is that absolute, don't you think? A correspondent from BBC interjected. No, and just like what we always say in a science class, let's be open-minded. The scientist wanted to make her statement sounds academic, but the hard truth did not escape from the members of the press, and other media content providers. A feature writer from Time magazine pushed on, so, you're saying that there could be an instance, that this present virus can be modified, or worst, upgraded artificially. Let's hope it won't happen, but yes, it can be. Dr. Del Pilar kept her fear to herself. There is no point in broadcasting to the entire world, that the transmission from bats to pangolins, then to patient zero, and subsequent communal infections at Wuhan and nearby provinces, happened with human intervention all throughout. The medical and scientific community has been familiar of her discovery of virus X from the H-CoV-229E subspecie, that she found in the dried blood spot sample of Dante, one of the 200 million Black Death victims in the 14th century. Her research team at the Wuhan Institute of Virology would have conducted an intensive comparative research of this strain, with those discovered in Guangdong province of southern China in November 2002. Considering that at the moment, Beijing and Interpol operatives does not have any lead on the case, Gwen felt it unnecessary to divulge any information, how the viral specimen was stolen from the laboratory of the Wuhan Institute of Virology, by an Al-Qaeda scientist. Based on what they discovered, from the rogue laboratory at the Gu Imperial Palace, she even has a strong suspicion, that Dr. Amira Siddiqui successfully isolated then propagated virus X, and have it inoculated into portable materials like pangolin food. She always has a dreadful feeling, every time she thought how her visit with Sage to the Wuhan market, claimed 2 lives by means of unnatural circumstances. Specifically, the testimony of the vendor and consequently his horrible death, suggests the possibility of a nasty and well-organized terrorist work, in the emergence of then 2019 nCoV outbreak. It was just a little headache and a mild tickle in the throat. Sage smiled wryly at Gwen. Each of them is wearing an N95 face mask, beneath a medical-grade face shield. He can't believe that this becomes a personal fight for his life. He was surprised when the LA County Department of Public Health officer called him to visit their clinic for a real-time reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction (RRT-PCR) test. You were listed in the contact tracing of people who were exposed to COVID-19 somewhere in India. The physician told him while obtaining a nasopharyngeal swab specimen. Much as he wanted to, but Sage cannot argue, because of the secretive nature of his work. He realized that the Central Bureau of Investigation of India was correct in its suspicion of a terrorist plot that was executed among the unsuspecting religious multitude.
A day after he arrived back in California, Karina sent him private messages in Facebook that Sharifia successfully initiated a biogerm attack in the crowded festival of Mahavir Jayanti at the Ranakpur Jain Temple. In the latest tally of our health department, there were at least 5,100 cases from that celebration, who tested positive of the coronavirus. Our government feared that the infected patients will transmit and further infect anyone who were in close contact with them in their respective villages. Sage can just imagine the implication of that viral weapon outbreak. The Mahavir festival gathered hundreds of thousands of Jain faithful across the country. The estimated infection rate would be incalculable. According to a report of Republic TV, the entire state of Rajasthan, with its 81 million total population, was put into a lockdown to minimize the spread of the virus in India. I was informed that my RT-PCR test detected the COVID-19 virus, that's why you were included for surveillance, due to close contact. The CBI operative was almost apologetic. How was it carried out? We saw her and I think there was nothing unusual. The CIA briefed him of the latest terror activities that were recently detected by Interpol in various parts of the globe, especially the introduction of a special unit that the Al-Qaeda ISIS organization called Valkyrie Squadron. Karina shed more light on the mystery. We examined the drone footages. Our intelligence analysts observed that the terrorist kept on fanning herself despite the mild and tolerable weather. Several witnesses who were close to her experienced that they felt some moistened air from her fan. I don't think it's a suicide attack through an aerosol propagation of the virus. It's not in the character of the White Widow to do that. He was alarmed of this news. It means Dr. Siddiqui may have artificially modified the virus to make it harmless to its carrier, similar to the antibody of bats, that can safely transmit the virus to its intended victim, without endangering itself of getting infected.
When read his COVID-19 RT-PCR result by an authorized medical laboratory. A multiplex reagents testing was performed, consequently indicating a positive result, COVID-19, which means that the causal agent SARS-CoV-2 was detected from his swab specimen. The ribonucleic acid of SARS-CoV-2 was identified in the respiratory specimen that was taken from you. She wanted to appear unconcerned in front of him, but can't really help it. The RNA is an important biological macromolecule that is present in all biological cells, which is involved in the synthesis of proteins, and carrying the messenger instructions from DNA. In the case of a coronavirus, the RNA gives the order for the viral agent to replicate and infect its target human organ, the lungs. Per advisory of the WHO, a confirmed case like you must be brought to a healthcare facility for isolation, and to prevent further viral transmission. I've been scheduled to be taken to a medical shelter. The LA County DPH promised that they will provide adequate health care, including a free-flowing coffee and ample supplies of my favorite books. Sage tried to lighten his growing anxiety. How nice of them to do that. In many countries that already exceeded their capacity to care for mild cases in dedicated health facilities, the government prioritized older patients and those with underlying conditions. Asymptomatic cases like you will be on home quarantine, or wait for the infection to aggravate, before you'll have a chance to be relegated to a health facility. What will it do to me? He is not afraid of blades and bullets, but he is indeed worried of an unknown enemy that so far doesn't have any proven remedy. The COVID-19 survival rate is quite impressive. Just follow the doctor's order, and you'll be fine. Her smile and a touch to his face relay a message of thoughtfulness and care. She attempted to rationalize the situation. Standard protocols set by WHO indicated that a patient's infection status should be determined through clinical correlation with patient history and other diagnostic information. In his case, other bacterial infection, or co-infection with other viruses were ruled out. Gwen held his hand for some minutes. She then asked him, "Is it okay if I take a swab sample from you? I will try to find out what makes you asymptomatic, and the extent of the viral infection." After seeing his nod of approval, she immediately took out a PCR nucleic acid detection kit from her handbag, and proceeded with the procedure. Her apprehension is scientifically founded. It may be that he is showing no symptoms, but extensive genetic testing may reveal the presence of the virus. In other words, despite his excellent health conditions, the normal functions of all his internal organs must be assured, and monitored as the hours passes by. Gwen cannot afford to lose him, recalling the case of Dante in 1348, during the early days of the Black Death plague in Siena, Italy. In the US, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimated that up to 40% of coronavirus infections are those in people who never feel sick. While various governments were trying to control the spread of the virus, the extreme evasiveness of COVID-19 makes it difficult to trace, test and treat those among the populace who unknowingly infect one another. Gwen was puzzled. The swab sample of Sage contains a trace of the arenavirus, that was combined with the nucleocapsid gene of SARS-CoV-2. So far, only a handful number of laboratories in the world possess this type of virus, and she knows each one of them, including the AI Med laboratory. She wanted to be sure, did anyone access the arenavirus, alpha, in the last few days? All of her colleagues answered, that they don't have the means to access the viral specimen in the laboratory, which is actually true. Taking a lesson of her experience in WIV, only the research leader and the AI Med sponsor through a WHO certified access code, can go into the depository facility for viral and bacterial samples. She opened the specimen vault and scrutinized the VTM and its content, a frozen stock of Virocell containing the isolates of arenavirus. Everything seems to be in order. The only time they were not around, was last weekend during their day off. But the logbook showed that no one entered the laboratory on that day. I would like to have a copy of the CCTV videos of last Sunday, she called the maintenance office. Dr. Del Pilar, incidentally, we cannot provide such videos since the CCTV were off on that day, for a routine upkeeping, a callous reply came in, 5 minutes later. Gwen sensed something is wrong. She called the security office, for the guard on duty of last weekend to report to her. My apologies, Doc. But Mr. Smith met a vehicular accident last Monday. A sense of déjà vu crept on Gwen when she was in China. She reopened the arenavirus isolate, and examined the package under a microscope. For security purposes and without anyone knowing her system, she kept a catalog of the nanovolume of each viral agent in store at the laboratory. Her suspicion was confirmed. There was an atomic weight difference in the specimen. A slight depression in the lineage of cells implies that somebody rubbed, probably by means of a prepared VTM, to the arenavirus isolates. Oh, my God. A single capsid with complete nucleic acid is enough to be isolated and cultured for viral propagation. Dr. Amira Siddiqui was smart enough to experiment, infusing the spike glycoproteins of 2 viruses, for a selective infection based on genetic composition of the patient. Gwen explained what happened. Piecing together with the story of Sage on Sharifia in India, it's so easy to deduce that the thief of virus X did another stunt with the arenavirus in AI Med laboratory. Who do you think gave her the access code to the lab? I always changed that every week. Any electronic security system can be hacked, he wanted to cut the matter short. The Los Angeles established temporary quarantine and isolation housing for individuals who have been exposed to COVID-19 and needs to isolate. In the absence of vaccine or medical treatment, self-quarantine is the most effective strategy in slowing the spread of the coronavirus, at the same time, protecting one's family and the community from infection. This medical shelter will help you heal safely from COVID-19, while remaining in close proximity to your family. It was Gwen who finally pushed him to sought medical attention. Sage was given an exquisite room at the Waldorf Astoria Beverly Hills, the medical officer at the county public health department enticing him the hotel's rooftop pool, that offers one of the best views of the city. Gwen appreciated an impressive lunch menu from Jean Georges Vongerichten. But the superb gourmet cannot obliterate her fury, that for the second time, another of her discoveries was stolen, and used to propagate evil.
I'm a little bit worried. Sage confided to Gwen on his way to the medical shelter. There's no reason for you to be upset. The powerful predictor to the risk of dying from this virus is old age. At mid-40s, and an absence of substance abuse, you're at the prime of your health, she answered him on the phone. Some researches disclosed that asymptomatic people have immune systems that behave like those found in bats, which allows them to clear the virus. They don't carry much virus, that according to CDC, asymptomatic cases are 75% as infectious as symptomatic ones. I don't think I will believe what a physician here said, that the virus in me will just die out. You better believe it. It's called ACE2, and fortunately at our age, it's not that critical. Gwen tries to sway his fear, but there's some truth to it. The angiotensin-converting enzyme 2 protein provides the entry point for the virus to hook into and infect a human cell. That same theory holds, that older adults have more ACE2 receptors located throughout the body, especially in noses, making them more vulnerable. That's it. He's not convinced. That's really it. Your isolation was intended that you can't infect others.
The more that she think of it, the more she's puzzled. Back at the AI Med laboratory, Dr. Guinevere Dalpilar and her team of researchers examined the ACE2 gene from Sage's specimen. She knew that certain medical studies reported that variations in this gene for some people make them more susceptible to getting infected by the virus S protein. The subject specimen shows a considerable level of COVID-19 virus, yet no symptom of signs of the disease is perceptible. What makes it difficult to detect is a case known as polysymptomatic. Usually, the victim does not suspect an infection because of a very mild symptom. The epidemiologist Dr. William Aylward expounded the case. Outwardly, everything seems to be fine. But by the time a symptom appears, it may be too late. Dr. Shin Yong-nam, a colleague from South Korea, raised a precaution. They had found out from numerous samples of asymptomatic cases that an ACE2 gene complication make patients be prone to chronic inflammation, scarring in their lungs, or narrowed blood vessels. This state usually led to a sudden and unexpected demise of the victim. The only time that one will know of having the virus is a sudden drop to the ground, and a few seconds of living moments. Dr. Alexander Ramji, the South African virologist, elucidated further. That is what happened to Dante. Gwen silently told herself, referring to the plague victim whose blood sample contained the COVID-19 causal agent, virus X.
Thank you for watching. Write in the comments section for your request as to what book, usually from Project Gutenberg, you want us to feature in U-Book channel.
Click like to boost the rating of U-Book channel, make a comment for us for the improvement of our services, and share this video to your friends, with the copyright intact. Please click subscribe, and hit the bell button to be notified of new uploads from U-Book channel.